So in order to bring the file into the Excel document, what you want to do is first just open a blank Excel document. Then what you want to do is go to Data, New Query, From File, From CSV, and we're going to go to the location where that actual file is. So for us, this is that file. So this is going to use Excel's self-service extract, transform, load engine, and then I'm going to do edit. So this is going to load it into Power Query. So this is the query editor. So on the right side here are all the steps for the query. When you first bring a file in, Excel is going to automatically do a couple steps for you. It did this change type and promote headers just to show you what those were. So first we brought in the source, then it said, okay, take this first line, make that a header, and then it changed the type. So anything that thought was a number, it changed. We actually are going to get rid of this step because we don't want it to do that for us. Because, for example, budget code, we want this to stay text, so we're going to get rid of this step. But I'm not going to go into how this, how Power Query, this extract, transform, load engine in Excel works. But this is an awesome tool that I really recommend checking out some YouTube videos or books on. I used it a ton. It's a really cool tool. But yeah, they just basically Excel does these first couple steps for you. So you can see this use first rows headers. That's what this promoted headers is. So first what we want to do, we don't want to follow what Excel chose for the change type. So I'm going to cancel out this step and go through and actually select which values we want to be numeric. So let's leave all these types like as text. Let's go to our date ones though. So let's change these dates. I'm going to highlight both of these columns. I held shift to highlight both of them and change these from text. So I did transform, went transform, and then change these to date, from text to date. Okay, and you can see that new step showed up on the right. Let's see what else we want to change. Okay, let's change return count. This should be numeric. So let's change this to numeric. Authorized amount all the way to FTE year 2. Let's change these all to numeric as well. I'll make these decimals in case some of them have decimals in them. Okay, oh, here's approval date. Let's make sure. So we had effective date, submitted date. Let's make approval date, date type as well. Okay, so that's approval date. The rest of these look good. I'm going to make this numeric too. I added this in. This is saying the first time the revision shows up. This is these columns we added in just to give this column here gives a unique by revision. This gives to the budget code. This gives to the fund level code, and this is just saying the first time that this revision code showed up. So this just gives us, in some of the measures we use later, this ends up being helpful. But you actually don't need it for almost all the measures. There's really just a couple that we use this measure for. But let's change this to numeric. Okay, so now that I've changed those types, we are going to load this into the Excel data model. So let's go home. And if you just click this button here, it's just going to load it into the spreadsheet. But we actually don't want to load it into the spreadsheet. We want to load it into Excel's data model, which was a feature enabled in 2010 or 2013. The 2010 with an add-on are built in 2013. Excel's data model just allows for more efficient processing. So once we click load to, click only create a connection and check this box that says add this data to the data model, and then click load. Now our data is going to be going into Excel's data model rather than just in the spreadsheet. This allows for a lot more efficient processing. It also allows us to build out more complex measures. And a couple other features, but those are the two big things. Also, you can build in the hierarchy structures. So let's let that finish loading. Okay, still should almost be done while this is going. This query is just loading into the Excel data model, and I like to save a lot when I'm working right after this. Just once it's loaded in, because once it's loaded in, we'll save and then go into the Excel data model. And to get to the Excel data model, it's just going to be this managed data model. So let's wait a second while that finishes. This may take a minute. And here we're just loading this one file in. You could load in multiple files as well. But okay, let's now go to, you can either go to the data model by doing data, manage data model, or you click this power pivot, manage. They're both going to take you to the same spot. I usually do power pivot and then click manage from there. That's just my own habit. So now here you can see where all of our data is. And if we were to load multiple queries in to the data model, they would show up just the way that spreadsheets look on the bottom here. We're only looking at this one though. Okay, so here we have all of our data. From here you can add columns. There's a lot you can do. Again, I'm not going to go into everything you can do in Power Pivot, but it offers, it looks a lot like Excel, but with a few differences. First thing we'll do then, now that our data is in our data model, let's set up our hierarchy. So the way we set up the hierarchy is we went to this diagram view. So here's our table in the diagram view. This diagram view, if you were to have multiple tables, these would each just show up just like this, and you could build connections between them and do a whole lot more. Again, we just use the revisions table here, so we just have this one example, but let's build a hierarchy. So, okay, let's go create hierarchy. I'll just call it level. I'm going to change that name to levels. Levels. And let's just pull up our data dictionary so we can set up our levels. So the order of our hierarchy is going to go committee, department, BRU, budget code, fund code, and cost center is what it's called in the actuals for us. We'll call it account group. So it would be account group / cost center. So we're going to set up a hierarchy that just mirrors this. So let's set up that hierarchy. Okay, so let's just add these different items to our hierarchy. So committee title, add to hierarchy levels. We're just going through and adding each of these to our hierarchy. Department title, add to our hierarchy. BRU code title, add to hierarchy. Budget code, where are you? Budget code, budget title. We're adding this to our hierarchy. Fund code, where are you? Fund code. Add this to our hierarchy. Account group, add this to your hierarchy. And this just sets up our hierarchy. So that diving in and out feature that we showed in our presentation, this allows that, so you can just double click on a level and it'll dive in for you. It's not necessary for a lot of what we did, but it's one nice feature and it's really easy to set up. Okay, and I'm going to put an overall category too that stands above committee title. That's just everything. So let's go and create actually another column. Could have done this before, but let's just go and add this column in that we'll call overall, and I'll add this to the category as well. So I just double clicked on that column. Okay, it's generating that new column, and I'm just going to call this new column overall. Okay, let's just call this overall. Okay, this is just building that column into, there it is. Let's go back to our diagram view and add this new column we have, this overall column, to our hierarchy. There it is. So let's say add to hierarchy levels. And you'll notice we want this overall to be at the very top. Right now it's at the very bottom. To change the order, you can just right click and then move it up or down. So we're just going to keep right clicking and moving this up to the top. Would be nice if we could just drag it. I don't think no, we can't. So we're just going to keep right clicking and moving it up until it's at the top. Okay, a couple more clicks. And we have our hierarchy set up. Okay, so at this point we actually have a lot of what we built out, set up, even just getting in the data model. What we haven't built yet are any of the measures. But first, just to show you kind of how things look, let's just build a couple pivot tables. So I'm going to say put this on a new worksheet. Okay, and you can see we have our levels, we have our other fields. Let's build a couple pivot tables, and let's build a couple pivot tables. So let's make another pivot table, new worksheet. Now I'm putting these on their own separate worksheets. This way, say we change the fields we have and they expand really far down, I like just keep them on separate sheets so that they don't overlap one another. And to get these into charts, I'll just click on the pivot table and I'll say insert. So let's call this, I'm just changing the title to pivot table 1. Let's change this one to pivot table 2. And I'm going to add charts to go with each of these and then put these charts on a separate sheet that will be like our template dashboard sheet. So this will be our pivot charts. Okay, so now we have this. I'm going to say insert recommended chart. It's just going to give us a general pivot chart. Okay, and I just control X that in order to copy it, in order to cut it, and I'll paste it over here. So here's one of our pivot charts. Let's make that a little bit bigger. Here, this looks good. And let's make this was for one chart. Let's grab another one. Which one did this go with? Forget which one I did. Let's just add a level and a count. This went with pivot table 1. Okay, so this was our chart 1. Let's add another chart to go with this. So insert pivot chart. Again, same thing. I'm just going to grab it, cut it, move it here, and let's make this chart about the same size. I'm going to get rid of these fields. I was just trying to see which table that was associated with. Okay, let's move these up so that they're the same size. And right now we have these two charts set up. Both of these, at this point, I could choose any fields I wanted. So let's say I want to split by revision type. And we don't have any of our measures set up yet, so we're going to do that next. But if you just drag, say you want to know just counts at this point, you could just, or say you wanted to know the sum of like amount year 1, you could drag this in, and this is going to give you the sum of amount year 1 by that type. We're going to set up measures that give you a little bit more specifically what you want, but here this gives you the sum, or we could change this to be the count of the rows. So here we have the count of the rows. So before we had sum of amount year 1, now it's the count. But we changed these to make it a little bit easier, and actually just going to use measures instead. But for now, just to show you how this is set up, you already can kind of see the architecture coming into place. And so let's go back to that. So here we have our sum set, and just so you can see the hierarchy feature is already there, let's set our hierarchy as our field. If you click into this, you can see that hierarchy structure is in place already. So now we just dove down one level. We can go to general government, and we have this structure. Then you can keep doing the same thing. I'm going to right click, and you can go drill up or drill down, or go to specific levels you're interested in. So let's go back to the committee title. And again, if you wanted to split this by multiple fields, let's do this by split this by revision type also. And we already have this set up. Actually, let's set up a couple just random charts here. So we have this one is by type, and let's make this one by recurrence type. So whether it's NL, so let's split first by that. Let's go recurrence type, and let's just have this be a amount year 1. Let's just make this the count of the rows. So this is just going to give us the count of the rows. Again, don't worry about the measures yet. We're going to set up some more sophisticated measures in a second. But just so you can see how these are set up. At this point, we could build in our slicers. And you'll notice here's one thing that's a little bit annoying right now that we have. If I add in a column, these are going to change size, and I don't want that to happen. So let's just undo that. let's undo those changing size. So what you can do to stop those from changing size as you add columns or as your pivot tables expand or you do anything, you can go to Format, Format, Size, click Properties, and I'm going to tell it don't move or size with cells. This way, if I add columns, it's not going to do anything. So here I was actually adding in columns and it didn't make any difference to the size of the charts. So I usually put that on if I don't want these things to adjust size, which I don't. Let's add some slicers just so you can see what those look like, how we built those slicers out. So let's I'm going to make these a little bit smaller so that we can build some slicers in. Let's make these a little bit shorter so you can build some. Let's just move them down. Let's move these down and get a couple slicers going so you can see how we built those slicers out. Okay. I'm going to get rid of the ribbon so we have a little bit of space. Okay, I'm just doing this more as an example of how we built the slicers out. So let's just take this chart. Actually, I want my ribbon. Let's go insert. I'm going to go insert and do this insert slicer tool. And here I can choose the fields I want to slice by. So let's say I want to set up slicers by revision type, by recurrence type, by anything that you are interested in. Let's just do those two to start. So I have these two slicers right now, and currently both of these slicers are only going to be connected with this one table. But so right now, if I change this, it's only going to affect this one table. But say I want this to split the values in both tables, I can let's zoom out just a little bit. If I want this to affect both tables, there's two ways you can do this. I can either change the connection properties from the table, from the chart itself, or I can do it from the slicers themselves. So let's do it from the slicers. If I do right-click, Report Connections, and then check this other pivot table, now this will affect both charts. Now you can see both charts are adjusting as I change these. Let's make that same change to this chart. So Report Connections, pivot table. So now both of these slicers will be active on both charts. So that's a nice little feature. Slicers are cool. One of our templates has a bunch of slicers laid out there already for you. Okay. Now one thing, let's build another. Let's say we want to do it by date. We could have just added in the variable ahead of time to split things by like year, month, quarter, etc. But Excel has some nice little features where it figures things out for you. So let's split it by month. So let's or split it by month, quarter, and year. Right now we just have this effective date. This is actually individual days. But Excel, if we add this into split by, it's going to figure out that we don't want to actually see it by individual days, and it's going to give us it's going to build new columns for us by year, quarter, and month. So watch how it just figured this out. Again, you could have just built this ahead of time in SQL or just up in Power Pivot by adding in a new column. But Excel figures this out for you too. So let's just drag it in, and it's going to think for a second. I don't know. Let's see. So there, it actually tried to do it. Okay, let's do Control Z. So I just undid that. Let's try splitting it. What it's going to do is if it gets overwhelmed, it's going to try and just find a quicker route. So let's keep this split here. And let's try that again. Let's do by effective date. And here it's processing. It's saying, okay, this is a lot of days. It's not going to figure it. It's saying this is too many days. You probably don't want me to actually do that. So what it did was it just split it apart for you. It actually just created new columns. It created an effective date by month, effective date by quarter, and effective date by year, and then your original effective date. You can see it actually built new columns out that just took the year, month, and quarter for you. So it just built these out. So now these are new columns, new fields you can split by. If we go to our data model and do Power Pivot, you can actually see it just built these new columns. These effective date year, effective date quarter, and you can see what the actual equation is. It just figured this out for you and said, oh, I think this is what you want. So it built these 3 new columns just on its own. Again, you could have gone and put these in it yourself, but Excel figured it out for you, which is nice. So I'm just going to let it do that. And again, now we have all of these in place currently, but let's get these out just to show you how it's set up. So now you can, add these as you like. So say you want to split by year, split by quarter, split by month. All of these are now options in there. And you could add these in as slicers now. So let's say insert slicer. Okay, more fields, and there are our options. So these are now slicers for us. Okay, now we have these slicers. And you can adjust these slicers. You'll add this to be more columns. You can change the color. You can customize these slicers a decent amount. Let's make these a little bit smaller. A couple more columns. Okay, looks good. And right now these are only, again, connected to this one. So let's just change these. Here I'll show you how to adjust the connections from the charts perspective. So here let's do right click. Actually no, this is under design. So I clicked on my chart. Here I'm just changing my connections to slicers. No, it's under analyze. So analyze, filter connections, and see it's connected to these first 2 slicers we made. Let's connect it to the other ones we made. So now this chart's also connected to these slicers. So watch. Now this chart's also updating as we change things. Okay, so we have several of these features set up now. We've got some slicers set up. We've got some charts. We have our fields. We have our fields in place. Now, right now, we have a lot of fields. And what if we don't actually want to show all these? Because a lot of these you actually wouldn't want to split by. Like, you don't want somebody who's using this to click unique revision identifier. Because if you do that, then that's going to be tons and tons of rows. And it's just going to slow things down a lot. But also, right now, let me just save this really quick. Let's call this OSBM template test. One other caution with using slicers, they're great, but they do require a decent amount of memory. Every slicer uses as much resources as a pivot chart does. So if you just want things to be moving really quickly, I usually just delete the slicers. I mean, you can just set up these as filters for each individual table anyways. But if you want them, I mean, they just depends on what you want to do. That's why we set up 2 different templates, one that had slicers and one that didn't. I'm also going to change all of these formats to, let's see, options, size, and I'm going to change these again so that they don't move. Don't move or size with cells. I don't want these to move or size. So this again means if I add in some columns, these aren't going to change. So if I go, if I insert columns, these don't move around. Okay, so now so at this point we have hierarchy set up, we have our slicers set up. Let's set up the actual measures that we talked about. So let's say we want to get, if you click on it right now, you can see, if you click on a chart right now, you can see all of these fields, but we don't have any measures. Also, actually, before we do that, let's get rid of some of these fields. We don't want all these fields to show up. So let's go hide some of these fields. To do that, let's go to Power Pivot, Manage, and I'm going to hide some of these fields. So, okay, we don't actually need, let's say we don't need to split it by, we don't want this to be a field. We don't need committee titles show up either, or any of these, because you can just use the hierarchy, drill down and drill up. So there's no point in showing those. So let's just hide, we're just going to hide these. We don't need any of these. We do want to keep revision type. So let's just hide these fields so that they don't show up on your pivot chart. So if I do right click, hide from client tools, This is going to make it now so that these do not show up in my pivot chart. So it's taking a second to update. This is just going to those charts and saying hide them so they don't show up. So this way your pivot charts don't get really clustered with a million fields. Let's see what else we don't need. Okay, we don't need this to show. Maybe we want this, so let's hide this one. I'm just going through and hiding those fields that we don't really want to show up. Okay, I'll leave these. Fun code, we don't want to see that. We don't want to see that. Okay, so I'm going to take a second and go through and hide these. Okay, hiding these from client tools. Okay, I'll leave. You know what? We're going to end up making some measures with these that sum these things. So I'm just going to hide these all as well. And we don't want to show all these unique revision. Let's hide these as well. Just going through and hiding all of those fields that we don't want to enable our user to split by. Okay, so let's hide all of these. Hide this. We'll leave these years, quarters, we'll leave these things, but we'll hide this. Hiding from client tools. Okay, so now if we go back to our Excel charts and we click on our pivot charts, you'll see the fields now are, so it's going to take a second to update. And now if we look at our fields, you can see there's way less of them. Now we only have those ones we actually care about. There's just those fields that we actually might want to split by. We have our date ones that we talked about. We have return count. We might want to split that off too, actually. But I think you get the point in terms of how hiding that can help to curate these fields so that they're not quite so busy. Okay, so now we have shown how to. So at this point, you've seen how to load the data in. You've seen how to build the chart up. You've seen how to curate these fields that are available. Right now, though, we don't have any measures set up. If you wanted to, you could drag these into your values, and use your set fields using these. But these are pretty limited. You've got sum, count, average, max, min, standard deviation. You have these set up ones, but you don't have. There's not a ton you can do. You may have remembered. You may have used at some point the fields, the calculated fields. These actually are not going to be an option here. What in this space, instead of using calculated fields, what we want to use are basically a much more sophisticated version of calculated fields, which are going to be these measures. So let's build out some measures. Okay, so let's just build a few measures out. Okay, so let's go Power Pivot, measures, new measure. So let's first build out a measure that is the number of revisions. So revisions take multiple lines, and say we want to just do a count of the number of revisions. Let's call this revision count. Okay, and here I'm going to let's do distinct count on our category that was the unique revision. So let's see. Actually, that is going to be our rev bn. This field right here is our revision split by bn. We want to use this instead of this unique rev identifier because this one doesn't split across years. So this is just going to say take a distinct count for this particular column. And let's change our format here. So it's number, whole number. And now we just created a measure. So now if we go and look at our table, we have this as one of our measures. So we have revision count. Let's insert another measure. Let's do a new one. Let's call this one let's call this one line count. Line count. I'll say line slash, yeah, we'll just say line count. This is going to be the number of lines in the actual file. So let's just have this be count rows and then put in the table name. So let's just count the rows in this table. Okay? And again, this is going to be number, whole number. So line count. Okay. We just created another. Now we have a couple different options. Let's take both these out just so you can see how this is set up. So now we have a couple different measures available to us. So let's say we have a chart. Let's take this chart and let's split it by, let's split this chart by revision type or revision category. Let's do it by revision type, and now we can switch out between different measures. So let's say we want to look at revision count. So this is the number of revisions. This is the number of lines. We're just choosing which measure. So we're just checking out the revision count, line count. Let's say we want to know the number of lines per revision. Let's make a new measure. We can go measures, new measure. Let's call this lines per revision. And we can actually reference our previous measures to make a new one. So this will just be line count divided by revision count. And again, this is going to be a number, and this is going to be an average. So let's have a decimal. Let's give one decimal place, because this is going to basically be the average number of lines per revision, however we're splitting it. So click OK. And now we have, this is another measure. We have this other measure available to us. This is lines per revision. So again, here we're splitting by revision type. Let's split this also by, let's add our levels in. So you can see the functionality is kind of coming to form now. We have this lines per revision set up. Now we're diving in. We're using our drill down and drill up, and you can be changing it. Say you get to something you're interested in, you want to check out the other measures. The functionality is starting to take form here. Okay, so I showed you one way of adding in measures. Another way of adding in measures is actually up in the Power Pivot window. And here, let's add in some more measures up there. Let's go manage. So here are those equations we wrote in. We could have also you could just click in any of these boxes and just type in a measure that you're interested in. So let's do here we've done revision count, lines per revision. Let's do something that is rather than line count, let's do something that is fund count. Okay, so let's just do total number of funds. So let's call this, first I'm going to type it fund count, and then you got to do colon equals, and now we're setting up our measure. And I could just type in the field that I'm interested in, but let's just go over and I can actually just click on. So here I'm going to do a distinct count on that field that I'm interested in. I could scroll through and find the field I'm interested in, but I'm doing distinct count on the on my here. This is going to be splitting by, so revision, but here this will split by fund. This is splitting by funds. This is giving you can kind of see this field is just like the unique revision one, except for we continue. It's just like the unique revision field, except for it extends to the budget code and then the fund itself. So let's just do a distinct count on this row and enter. And now this is another measure we just created. Here we did it from the Power Pivot window. And again, let's change that format to whole number. So now we have fund count. Okay, let's add in line. Let's do funds per revision. This is going to be really similar to our lines per revision. We'll do equals fund count divided by revision count. Fund count divided by revision count, enter. And now we're just building out measures. We're building out some more measures. Let's change this type, whole number. And just to show you, we built these measures in Power Pivot. Let's go down and check to make sure that they actually are populated on our charts. Let's just click on our chart. And if we go down and we look at our measures, look, here are those new measures we just created. We can again just sub them out. Here's fund count now. Here's funds per revision. Okay, so you can see those types that have, these guys have a few more. So that the number of funds per revision here is around 2.3. And you can adjust these formats however you want. Let's zoom out some. So right now we're zoomed in a couple levels. Let's zoom out. So drill down, drill up. Let's drill back up to the committee title level. Okay, and you can see the number of funds per revision. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video here and go through and add in. Remember, there's 21 different. We've got 21 different measures that we built, so I'm going to go in and add those in. And at that point, that's pretty much it. Really, we have our hierarchies, we have our different measures being built out. We've curated our fields. We have a couple other fields that we've added in. So we've curated our fields that you can split things by. So that's pretty much it for these first two templates. The one template we gave you has different slices on it. Another template doesn't.